All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we talk to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Brian Douglas, who's the founder of OpenSauced. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Looking forward to learning more about what you are working on. For people that haven't heard of your company, what is OpenSauced?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, open source, we're helping to find the best engineers through using open source data. And I've been using this pitch, which is called Moneyball for engineering teams. And that kind of summarizes it. If you're familiar with Moneyball, building the championship teams on a budget, we're trying to do that through open source.
So walk us through a little bit of the user experience here. If someone was to use your product, become a customer, what happens? What do they get? Walk us through a little down the line there.
Yeah, so I do want to point out we are a two-sided marketplace. So if you're a user, you're a developer, you sign up, you tell us what your interests are, what type of languages, frameworks you ship code on. And then we also ask you to connect your GitHub account. So if you're doing any open source, we could see data on GitHub. And we're doing some cool crawling in the background, which you don't have to bore the listener on that. Happy to DM me later, and I can go into more details if you're a VC. But what I'm getting at is that experience is you're going to showcase your skill set, your resume, what you've done as a developer. And if you're a company or a founder, you're going to log in and you're going to create these things we call insight dashboards and find projects, either your projects or your competitors' projects, and create a dashboard to see insights into those projects. So if you want to find the top 10 developers in this ecosystem, that's how you get started. So still early days. We're only about 7 months into this. So we're going to be improving that onboarding experience pretty soon, but happy to have a call and chat with anybody who's interested.
Walk me through a little bit about the origin story here. How did you come up with the idea for this company?
Yeah, so the idea really came. I worked at GitHub for almost 5 years, and I was leading developer relations. So meeting with top companies using open source, top open source maintainers, top companies not using open source, and they always ask the same question of like, "Hey, how do I find developers? How do I connect in the community? How do I do a good job?" And I had a bunch of ideas that we're now prioritizing into open source. And open source came out of an idea that I had years ago, where I was doing a lot of engagement at a startup. I was employee number 3 at Netlify, and we were using open source to scale our product and get in front of the right founders and the right team to start deploying web apps. And from at that point, I bought a domain called OpenSauced, and I was using it as a CRM tool to track my interactions with these projects. That's evolved since. I bootstrapped that for a while, rebuilt the project back in June, and went to do it full time.
And I'm curious, like, did you have one day, do you just like think of the name and you're like, oh, I'm going to get this domain? Or like, how would you think of this like brilliant name for first a domain, now a whole company?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't I have a lot of domains, and I'm as an engineer by trade, I do name driven development is what I call it. So you buy a name, you build a product based on that name. And .pizza came out in 2016, so I ended up picking up a couple of .pizza names. OpenSauce is the one I still have, the one of the few I still have, and I like the pun of pizza pun of open sauced as a sort of pun of open source. It's nice to watch people sort of like the Freudian slip of they say open source or open source, and they're kind of interchangeable. And that's what we like. The real origin of the name itself and what we sort of fell into is like there was an interview with Gucci Mane back in 2009 on Tumblr about how do you have the sauce. Gucci Mane is a trap artist in Atlanta, actually the godfather of trap. Let me put respect on his name. And so he was asked, how do you have the sauce? And his response was, if you don't got sauce, then you lost. So you have to have the sauce. And with open source, I feel like that is the sauce for developers. Like it is where the influencers hang out. It is the hardest place to compete as an engineer, and we're leveraging that talent pool to showcase and for people to connect and build relationships with.
And as you're building this out, I'm curious, like, what does a day-to-day look like? When you wake up, like, what do you spend your time on? And when you go to sleep, what have you done?
Yeah, I say day to day is we were getting a lot of good conversions from LinkedIn, organic conversions and Twitter. So a lot like every other day I'm writing a blog post, sort of prepping some content or documentation to put on the internet because we haven't done a lot of paid ads. We're just really just doing organic growth and traffic and appearing on podcasts. So doing a lot of that. I'm also planning the product. So I've moved away from engineering to now just founding and doing product work and sales and customer discovery. So basically building out the roadmap. So trying to see where the engineers are as far as code wise, what's blocked, if there's a story to share in an issue or a design document, working with the team in that way. So like that's my beginning of the day. And then I'm on calls pretty consistently every day, talking to either future customers or future investors.
And if you were to kind of zoom out into the future, 5, 10, 15 years, what do you see for OpenSauced? In other words, what's the big vision here and what direction are you rowing in for the company?
Yeah, I see the vision of we end up. So there's a number that I share all the time, 0.01%. So out of 280 million projects on GitHub, 230,000 actually have more than 5 contributors. So the vision is that we increase that number of people participating in open source. Like open source is a great funnel for sales, for marketing, for recruiting, whatever it is. Open source is a great way to show your goodwill to the community. And as more and more companies start adopting it, so you see YC has about 25% of the companies currently in YC for the current batch is open source first. So there's a trend where there's more and more companies doing open source as their tactic of gaining adoption and doing free marketing or organic growth. So we want to ride that tailwind that's happening currently, but we also want to build that platform or social network, if you will, of this is the place developers come to showcase their skills. So where LinkedIn is where you could build meaningful connections and turn that into something of value. Like OpenSauce becomes that meaningful connection platform for people who use GitHub.
And in order to make that happen, you'll need some help, right? It takes a village to make a startup work and scale. So my question for you is, how can the forward-thinking founders community help? Are you hiring, raising money, looking for, customers, developers? How can we assist?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a developer and you're listening to this, would love for you to connect your GitHub, like showcase your skills, pick your interests, and help us introduce you to places. So if you're looking for an early stage company or a founder to work with, that's what we want to make those connections. Our ideal customer today is any early stage founder, and they're looking to hire their first or their next engineer. And we could showcase based on the skills that you are in demand. So if you're looking for React devs or Rust devs or data science, we want to make that connection for you. So reach out, hit me up, hello@opensauce.pizza, and would love to have a conversation.
And then for my last question, you just covered part of it, but just make sure we cover the whole range. If someone wanted to learn more about what you're doing, connect with you online, where are all the places they can find you? Do you have a website, social media, YouTube, email address? How can someone learn more?
Yeah, so OpenSauce has everything. YouTube, we've got a LinkedIn, we got a TikTok. So we have a newsletter as well. So opensauce.pizza is our domain. Scroll to the bottom, subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get updates on our features and where we're headed as far as roadmap. But me personally, I'm BWO on Twitter. So hit me up on Twitter. I've got quite a bit of following. I'm kind of a big deal. I like to say I'm the Beyonce of open source and would love to chat. I answer DMs as well.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.